Today's session, this is more of a basic session that we're going to be doing today. Just some foundation of what we do at AIQ, how to configure certain aspects of this platform, and just for new clients and anybody who wants a refresher. So first off, let me just give you an idea of what this platform is. It is a Windows-based platform, of course, resides on your hard drive. It's not a huge platform as far as fingerprints is talking about memory and hard disk space. It doesn't take up a lot of space on your computer, which is good. Primarily, we install straight off of the C drive, and you get a program that then has an icon on your desktop that looks like this, quick launch menu. That quick launch menu is this lovely little bar here. These are all component applications that are part of AIQ. So what do we do here at AIQ? As far as analysis is concerned, this is a technical analysis program that does end of day with a little bit of intraday snapshot that you can bring into this version. And when I say this version, this is the version that we'll be focusing on today, TradingExpert Pro. Now, within the platform itself, you have various components that allow us to chart things like any other platform would. But we also have great tools for slicing and dicing the databases of tickers, our reporting area. This is canned reports. We have a profit manager, a portfolio manager tool that is pretty much weapons grade, as we call it. We have money managers who use that tool. It allows you to enter positions that you have from your broker and sets up alerts for exits, which you can also configure within the system. So that's good to know. This system does not have direct access to brokerage. We are entirely an independent standalone system. We do not provide access so you can place a trade. Everything we do here is about data mining to find candidates. So let's start here. I'm going to start with where everybody would start with, which is the chart button, this button here. When I click on that, it brings up a charting area for us. And, the charting areas, obviously, there are 1,000 charting packages out there. Two things to bear in mind with what goes on within AIQ. AIQ itself resides on your drive. All the data's on the drive. So it's Blizzard's fast speed. If I hit my escape key and I bring up a ticker like Apple, it comes up really, really fast on the screen here. Now, another thing to bear in mind with this is that, again, I don't have to, I can scroll down and look at tickers using a list function, which is kind of similar to like a quote montage function without all the busyness of quotes. And that's one of the aspects of the system that is pervasive throughout everywhere in AIQ, and that is the list function. See this here where it says SP500? I have a bunch of different lists in here. What I'm going to show you just quickly here is just one list that gives me an idea of what's going on as far as number of stocks and how quickly I can move through them. So when I change this view and I hit my enter key, there's a list view on the right here. I can either click and scroll down, use my scroll bar, or I can use these arrows. Now, bear in mind, we're on an internet connection and I'm sharing my screen. So my screen will probably move much faster than it'll refresh on yours. But you can see how quickly you can move from one chart to another very, very quick. And that's because everything is localized for you. So this is a standard open, high, low, close chart here. You can switch this view to candlestick. You can also switch this view to Heikin-Ashi, which is a very cool tool for finding trends in stock. I love this tool. You'll see where it's red and green in trends. It's very useful for looking at trends in tickers. So it's a sort of an advanced version of a candlestick. We'll go back to the high-low bars for the moment. So you can see how quickly you can move for a stock if you're a visual person. You like to look at a stock real quickly. When I hit the enter key again, I'm back here into this control panel. The control panel really makes it very easy for us to go through a series of stocks with different indicators. So I can do this several different ways. I'm going to get rid of this chart. So this is blown up. This is just happens to be the Bank of New York has no significance other than I randomly stopped on there. You can see here you have an upper area and a lower area. The upper area are indicators, bands usually that apply to the price chart itself or moving averages. So, for example, I can apply a exponentially smooth moving average. Let's put all three of them by holding my control key down. I can put three of them on there. You'll notice here, really hard to see those at the moment, right? That's because I messed around with the colors so that we could quickly show you how you can fix these things. I like to fix this stuff globally. I mean, it comes out default with black and white, a black background with these indicators all set up. You can actually go into the settings area here, go to charts, settings, and colors, and we can do a global fix on these bands. So, for example, here I have these are Fibonacci arcs. You've got Gann fans, indicator color 1, 2, and 3. Notice here I've got 1 is set to one color, 2 is to another, 3 is to another. So I'll make all these brighter so I can see them. Use white, and then I'll use green. So when I do that, you can see the bands now appear nicely. So I've done that globally. It makes it easier for me just to see. And again, you can adapt this to your viewing needs. You see this font's pretty small. You want to change that, or you can change the font as well. That's up there. But we won't change it for this one. Drawing tools real quickly before we get into the indicators here. You have a whole panel of them up here. Slip mine over. This includes all the standard sort of tools that you would expect for this type of charting platform. You've got trend lines, regression lines, Fibonacci's, Gann, fan, arrows, text, you name it, you can get it on. Trend line, another trend line. So again, I can just right click and remove these. Very easy to do. Delete everything in here. When you've got this crosshairs on, this is also great for having a quick look at a particular price point. See that font up there, you can see the price and the date. I will change the font on this because this is very, very, very small at the moment. Let's go down. Actually, what I want to do, give me a second here. Let's go look at chart settings here. Let's take the font up to much larger, and I'll just down. All I've done is I've given myself a much more space for charting, but I've increased the font so you can see things easily. And I like this with the crosshairs. I can see the price and the value on any given point by moving it around the chart. So the indicators, I added the upper indicators here. They're standard indicators like this. I'm sure most of you know about upper and lower Bollinger Bands. You may not be aware of some of the ones we have in here. AIQ has its own bands created from a proprietary formula, upper and lower AIQ, which looks pretty good because it's designed to encompass 95% of the trading of a stock. And you can see here quite often when it cuts above the band, it moves back down. Quite often when it cuts below the band here, it moves back up. So that's a pretty good indicator, something that you don't get quite the same information with a Bollinger Band. When I go back to Bollinger Band here, you get upper and lower Bollinger Band. You get breakouts on the upside, but you get a lot more, and on the downside too. And then you don't get the breakout down here. It didn't break below the band to indicate that it was not time to move up. But Bollinger Bands has its own usage, obviously, for Bollinger Bands squeeze. When the bands are squeezing together, are often changing the volatility is about to happen, as you see over here. So I can save all these. If I just want to save this setup and not do any of the lower indicators, I have a ability to make every single chart come up. Chart settings, save current indicators. It'll bring up every chart with what I say. Lower area here, so there's a lot of technical indicators. I've just finished a book on that, actually, on only 30 technical indicators. There are hundreds and hundreds of them out there. These are the most widely used ones out here. So you have them all in here: MACD, directional movement, volume accumulation percentage, things like unbalanced volume, money flow stochastics. These are all pretty standardized. We also have a point and figure chart. So if you're familiar with the point and figure, looks pretty small down here. By the way, you can do this on any part of the chart. You put your mouse over and hit the zoom key, and you can see then the point and figure itself. Some people love that. Pretty cool indicator. We also include some very specialized stuff for us, which we'll get into in a moment, because we'll look at the group. I'm also going to put the volume underneath it, and I'm going to do chart settings and save current indicators and call that good. So any of these indicators, by the way, I can double click on them. If you're like a longer term trader, for example, MACD, you might change these settings. You can look on the internet, ask the AIs for a longer term setting for using MACD as an entry or exit tool. Or if you're a shorter term, you might want to change what we have in here. Short term moving average is 12. Long term I have set at 25, and the signal line is at 9. So pretty close to the standards that Gerald Appel, the creator of the indicator, had created for that indicator. So any of these indicators that have settings in there, you can modify any of these settings down here. Pretty straightforward. Longer term charts, I can click on a W for a weekly or an M for a monthly. So I'm all the way back to 2010 on this chart. Pretty good looking chart. Tool, very quick to do, using this increase and decrease spacing, as you can see, back to 1993 on the data on this chart. And again, it's very, very quick, of course. I can just sit through other charts. You can see them changing very, very quickly. You notice that it's keeping the MACD on there, but I took off the volume, that back on there, Control key and click that back on. We now have an MACD and volume showing on there. If you like to have grids, some people like grids, There's a toggle key. G will toggle the grids on and off. A key actually changes the cursor line on the far right there to just a little diamond. So that's, you can then see the price bar. So again, real quick overview. Great thing with this particular platform is your ability to create watch lists. So we will have enough time in this session to go look at our reporting area, look at a strategy, dump the top stocks on the strategy into charts, and show you how you can then tag those and add them to a list for you to review later. So main charting area. One thing I looked at here, when I hit the enter key, you notice we're back to that list of tickers. I'm going to go back to a daily view. You see how quickly and easy it is to flow around in charts in here. There's another type of list view that is very unique to us, and it's called group sector view. When I click on SP 500, if you notice on the right-hand side here, we're still on the same stock, Citigroup, but you'll notice these rather esoteric names for different tickers here, and there's a hierarchy. This is the S&P 500 group sector structure. We update this to keep in line with what S&P has pretty much every 2 or 3 months. Every stock is assigned to a group. Every group is assigned to a sector. This assignation is not something that we created. It's just done by Standard & Poor's. We assign them into groups, and then we create a group chart from the tickers that are in there. So look at this. You've got banks here, right? This is Citigroup. What would you expect to be in here? Another bank, Bank of America, of course. PNC Financial Services, as Wells Fargo down here. So all of these stocks are within a group. How do I see the group? I could click it on here, or I have an explore tool here that takes me up to the group, and it's diversified banks. And here you have a chart that's created from the stocks that are within the group itself. And we do that for every S&P 500 group, and those groups are then combined together into a sector. So diversified banks, guess what? If I move sideways here, guess what else is in here? Financial exchanges and data, insurance brokers. So these are all groups. Each has a chart, a current chart, that's based upon the stocks that are in there, right? And we'll look at group sector rotation, which is one of the power tools in here. If I want to move to the sector level, I can move up. Notice where it went. So these areas here are all the groups within the financial sector of the S&P 500. This is the financials of S&P 500. We'll look fairly close to, for example, S&P index of financials, or a SPDR, sorry, not a SPDR, but a ETF financials. It'll look pretty close to this, because this contains every single group that is in that financial environment. So again, you can go back down, look at the groups that are in there, and you can see the rotation. Look at insurance brokers. It's absolutely on the way out. But compare that to life and health insurance, which is pretty much flat. Multi-line insurance, not going a great deal. Property and casualty insurance, multi-sector holdings, transaction and payment processing. So every single group is out there, and there's all the stocks that are within the group itself. So you can analyze groups and then go down and find the top stocks in there. One of the great things with group sector rotation is you can get into a group and you can find the leaders and the laggards. There's always going to be some. Generally accepted principles, stock markets direction itself dictates 60+% of a stock's movement, but about 20% of a stock's movement is also based upon what segment in the market it's in. So we have the tools here that makes it real easy to identify what are the leading and lagging groups and sectors, and therefore give yourself an advantage in that stock selection process. But you can see when you take all of these groups together, it averages into the S&P financial sector, and that sector is basically a combination of all the stocks that are in all of those groups. You can see how that looks different from each individual group, although some groups will be moving fairly in sync with others. So let me go back to the indicators here real quick. Multiple charts, again, you can do this. Sorry, I should have been back in the panel here. I'll select any group here. I can click and just drag down or use my control key, bring up multiple charts within the group, which is great. I mean, I can see what different groups are doing. If the charts are too small, I'll take an indicator off. I'll go down to 3 charts, so you can see all of that information very clearly on the screen for making decisions. So snapshot really of what's going on. This is the place we all end up eventually. But to get to this place, unless you're a true, a high-speed chart pattern recognition person like Dan Zanger, who uses this platform and just scrolls through hundreds of stocks very, very quickly, like I've shown you, looking for his patterns. And that's really good for this. I mean, it's really fast. Because the streaming platforms, you've got to wait for it to come across the internet. Even with a fast internet connection, it's still lags a little bit. Here it's all coming off however fast your hard drive is. It all comes in very, very quickly because it's all local. So this button here takes me back to this launch menu here. Market charts we'll have a quick look at the end because we have two AI systems in here. The AI systems are both a decision tree, what they call inference engines, that were developed in the 90s and thousands. And these are tried and tested with all their idiosyncrasies. We haven't modified or changed these engines for a while. Part of that is because we ran into trouble when we started doing this. You start moving the goalposts, and it's really easy to do backfitting. There are a lot of platforms that do backfitting. Oh yeah, give me these 10 ticks. No, give me this one stock. Give me Tesla. Show me the optimum setting for MACD to get buy and entry and exit signals. Sure, we'll do that. That's backfitting. I don't like that at all. I like the playing field to stay the same. Yeah, some of the constants you can change because they're more reactive. If you're say a swing trader, day trading. This is not the platform for day trading. But swing trading, short-term trading, which I like. I don't like holding stocks for too long, mostly because I trade options. So again, you're back to looking for the best setup for your needs. And I would say that the indicators in the control panel here right now are set up for end of day, short to intermediate term trading. MACD, that one can be changed. Some of the others like RSI Wilder can also be changed. So they're a little more reactive. Stochastics is another one, or what they call SKSD, short, there's the stochastics itself. When I double click on this indicator here, this one has a period of 10 period. You could change this and make it a little more reactive. So if I put down to 5, you'll notice this thing compresses. See how it compresses? But you get a lot more crossover signals on that particular indicator by doing that. So bear that in mind. If you're delving into indicator settings or you've looked on the internet, read a book, seen a video, a lot of effort over many decades has gone into keeping the system the most tried and tested and most useful values within here. Before I get into reports, look at the barometer. This is another unique thing. As I scroll back, so let me blow this chart up to maximum screen here. As I scroll back, I'm going to use this arrow here. As I scroll back, look what happens to the color barometer in the control panel there. It changes, and as you'd expect, solid green means this indicator is saying it's very bullish. Solid red is very bearish. Yellow with a green arrow up means it's transitioning from bearish to bullish, and yellow with a red arrow down, it's going from bullish to bearish. So you see this transition happen as a stock moves from one trend to another. So look at it here. This is a downtrend, right? So look at how many of the indicators are solid red. The majority of them are, a couple, but negative volume would be green. That's an inverse indicator, you might say. But as soon as things start turning around, you start seeing more green coming in. Look at that. As soon as you get to there, look how green that is. So you get a real snapshot that something's happening there that's not what was going on in the previous couple of weeks. So it's a very good instant snapshot of all of your indicators. And by the way, if you don't want all those indicators, you can get rid of as many of them as you want. Start settings, indicator library charting, click highlight the ones and send them back over there. They'll disappear from your screen. Reports. This is where we want to be today. Oh, on my other screen. So this is a canned selection of reports. Covers stocks, groups, sectors, mutual funds. I don't do mutual funds, so I don't have them in here. And also does an overall 30,000 foot market analysis, which is really cool. And it's one of the great tools in here. And we'll start with that because when you come in every day, when you've done your download, and it's a one-click download every night, first place you go, all of this is generated for. It's all done. Everything's all automatic. When you come in here, you go to reports first, you go to summary reports and the market log. And in here, it'll collect as many as you generate. I just clear it out once in a while, which I did today. So this is for last night, of course, because the market's just shut today. I would have did this morning, did my download, or I even did it late last night, brought in all my data. Watch what is on this screen here. So this is a classic look at how the market is doing overall. So in this case here, don't worry about this access prop. That's a little more advanced tool. The main thing I'm looking at in here is my snapshot of the world. So what did the Dow Jones close out on last night? There's the value there. what was the change from the previous day. I can have SPX, S&P 500 in there too, but I don't have it in here at the moment. Big thing here is I have this ER, stands for expert rating. It's 400 rules that are applied to the market itself. This is the market being the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the breadth data off of the New York Stock Exchange. What it said is, ran a whole bunch of rules. 3333 means it's basically nothing happened that day. What's important here is when the AI does a signal. 3 days ago, it had a buy signal, 97.3 down. These signals can be a little early. They can last a few days before you get a reverse signal. This, when it gets an imbalance like this, shows me that the market is looking at a little bit of momentum to the upside in that day. So if I go over to the chart itself, which I had up on the screen a moment ago, there it is. Let me just chart that DJIA for you, and I'll show you what this is. Excuse all these lines on here. That's me going crazy. Get rid of that one and that one. So let me show this button here, ER. I need to go this way. So right here, it says ER 97 up, down 3. When this level gets to 95 or greater, that usually indicates something's likely to change. And I've actually put arrows when these high signals have occurred on the chart. What this is there's 400 rules that evaluate both the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the breadth of the New York Stock Exchange to give us a rating. The more bullish rules apply or happen, the higher this number gets. And these are all rules and combination of rules that are tried and tested. So you can see some of the rules here. These are the major rules that are applied. We're talking about February the 6th. So closing prices on the market have increased to a 21-day high, but market breadth as measured by advanced declines is declining. It's a non-confirmation in a trading trending market as a weak bearish signal. So that's one of the threes that are downside, right? Here's a bullish one. The up-down volume oscillator has turned positive when the advanced decline oscillator, and I'll go with the whole thing. This market is viewed as a bullish. So look at these. These are bullish events. Combinations of indicators, divergences in indicators, new high and new low indicator off of the New York Stock Exchange to give us an idea of what's going on. It gives us signals on the Dow Jones, and it gives us early signals when there's changes like to come about. So you get a buy signal here, you get a sell here, another sell here, you get a buy here, you get a sell here, you get two buys here, another buy here. Then we get a sell, and I haven't marked the others, another buy here, and a sell here, another buy here. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a sell coming up again soon in a couple of days. Gets pretty good signals overall. Again, it's one of those things that is done using an expert system. I can search for a high expert rating on any ticker by clicking ER. And I can also view expert ratings. That's a slightly different system, but still the same number of rules on a stock. So for example, here's Alcoa had a 0-100, and that was on 116. And again, you can query the rules, shows you all the different rules that fired. And there's loads and loads of different rules out there that help, contribute towards an expectation that the stock's likely to fall down. So I could go for all the stocks like that, but the great thing about looking at stocks themselves is through the reports. So the market log in here, this tells me when the last rating was on the market. It was a 97 up 3 days ago. Very bullish. It looks at the indicators here on the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and it looks at the indicators here on the New York Stock Exchange breadth data. Breadth data is advanced declining issues in their volume, new highs and new lows. Very bullish look at that particular time. So it gives me an idea. When I look at that, I can also see which percentage of groups are going up or down, and what their change is from the previous day. And that's the next area we'll look at. Because on this particular day, I can then say, hey, let's go find groups that are increasing my momentum. And I can do this by going to group and group analysis here. Remember all those tickers we saw in the charting area? All of those S&P 500 groups, there's loads of them. This is where we go and find out which groups are in a trend and which are not, and which are moving up and which are moving down. This group is ranked. Everything is ranked in here. The group with the highest trend has 100. The group with the lowest has a minus 100. So it's right down the bottom here. Let me get my click happy out of the way. So minus 100, managed healthcare, right? This trend score is built up on several different indicators. It's a MACD oscillator, directional movement indicator, and money flow oscillator, all contribute to the trend. It's a relatively short-term trend. So if I click on this stock that's the most hammered going down, and just click on the chart here, you can see it's not hugely down, right? It's not hugely down. It's just down a little bit. So the question is, sorry, it's down here. And the question is then, what can I do with this information? What's the best way of using this tool? So this is the group with the strongest trend down, right? So let's look at the group with the strongest trend up, which is at the other end. Roll right up to the top here, property and casualty insurance. And you can see this trend is pretty good. Again, from this point here up to this point here, you're looking at, that's a 10% move since the first portion of January. That's pretty good. So if you're looking to buy into a group that's in a trend, you could just drop down into the stocks in here and go buy the stocks. The better way to use this report is to, these are the trends. Sorry, that wasn't the top group, was it? Let's go up to the very top group here. And this is this one here. And give me a second here. Yeah, the top group is actually other specialized REITs. I won't look at that one. I'll tell you why, because it's only got one stock in it. Would you believe they make groups with just one stock in? But look at this one. This is specialty chemicals. So this is a really good trend up, right? So you might think you've missed the move on that, especially when you look at the divergences between that and the SKSD. I bet the MACDs are looking, and it's kind of moving in sync. Sometimes divergences occur and are really visible. So this group is in a very strong trend up. So I know that if I go down into the stocks themselves, most of the stocks are going to be moved up already. So you might have missed the move on this one. This one's had a gap out. So this one looks exactly like the group does. You can see quite a bit of the move has happened for most of these stocks. It is better to go into the group area here and find groups that are in a moderately good trend but have a delta trend score that's the highest. This means it's moving up the report. So this one here, for example, look at this. Electronic manufacturing services. I don't care what stocks are in there. I just know it's got a good trend and it's accelerating. So if I do a chart of that particular one, this is what's happened here. Remember, we're looking at the group itself. So it's got a modest trend, the modest trend over this period here. It's kind of reached, and if I'm using Bollinger Bands here, reached the band and come back each time. If this was to progress beyond the band the next morning, this might be a good group to be in. Now, you're not going to buy the group because what you want is to find the best stock in there. Groups have leaders and laggards. This group has two stocks. I'll hit the enter key so you can see it. JBL and TEL. So I bet these are looking pretty similar. You get rid of MetLife and get rid of this one. And we've got two of that one. And I got two of this one too. So check it out. There's the group itself. Look at the two stocks in there. One of them is exactly like the group. The other one is kind of falling behind. This would be the sort of stock you'd go for, is one that's a little bit of a laggard. There's still a bit of room to the upside on there. Now here, you're kind of at the level of a recent high, right? So you might get some resistance. This one, got a bit of room up here to 250. So you can see using groups by finding a group that's in a trend, but an accelerating trend, go in there. Here's a stock that's doing pretty much like the group is. This one's a little bit behind. There's a little bit more room on this one for it to move up. Great way of doing analysis. You find a stock, so hey, I like this stock, right? Well, what am I going to do with it? I'm going to go find some other stocks, but before I do anything else, I'll add it to a tag list so I don't forget it, right? So when I'm doing a tag, what I do here is this is the stock I want, and I'm going to actually set myself a tag list up here. Give me a second here. Set tag list. And what I normally do is I create myself a new tag list and I call it, what's today's date? I always use dates because 12/26. Once I click OK on that, that is then set as a tag list. I can then, take this stock that we like, right? This TEL, and I can tag it. And it said, you want to tag it to that list? Yeah, okay. And I can come back to that later. So let me just do another quick look in here. Remember, I was looking for a trend with a delta trend, the DTS that's accelerating. That's pretty good, that group was. I can then go back down in here and say, okay, what have we got here? This is pretty good, 94 with 5. This one's better. This one's got 92, DTS of 23. That's pretty good. So I can pop that into a chart here, throw out this one and get rid of this one. So you can see why this has a good trend score to the upside, right? But look, I've got all these stocks that are in there. So what I can do is I can go down into the stock itself. I know I'm looking in a situation like this for a stock that's accelerating. And so I can take my down arrow and do it this way. You see it goes down to the first stock. What do you think? Analog devices, that's a leader, right? It's leading that group. There'll be other stocks that are not leading. You look at AMD. AMD, completely different. Got a little bit of room for maneuver, but not a lot going on there. Here's Avago Technologies. Again, this one's not moving up as fast. got a little bit of resistance in this area here. So you can scroll through and look at the indicators. I just happen to be using MACD and volume at the moment, but you could use whatever indicators you like. Here's a great example. This is like broken out, but this could be a good opportunity here. Although there's a bit of a divergence here between the MACD and that, which might give me a bit of a pause there. Another one here that's kind of moved already up into high territory. This one's still same sort of thing. This one would be kind of good breakout from this level here. We've got a bit of room to the upside. Again, the group's already said it's going to be, we're in a trend, accelerating trend upside. The market was bullish when this report was generated. And so it's a good opportunity. Here's, this indicator here, this stock here. Previous high back here, it's met that. If it breaks out, that might be a good stock. So let's say, hey, we like that one, a little bit dangerous looking. Let's pick one that's got a bit of room to the upside. This stock is definitely in a downtrend. So unless it breaks out above this sort of level here, I doubt we'll be coming out of that yet. The video, of course, the video, if it breaks out from here, we've got that room to the upside a little bit, but the video's been stuck in this range for a while. Again, Micron Technologies, looks like we missed most of the move on that. Why buy into that? This one was the same. But this one was with the breakout to the upside, might have some potential. So I'll tag it, right? I'll tag it into that same list. And then when I've done, I go through a couple of the groups like that. The other thing I go through is I look at stock reports. There's all sorts of different ways of looking at stocks, but I like to look at the stock reports and look for either price gaps, they're pretty good, or the high expert ratings that are confirmed. When I say confirmed, they're confirmed by a price phase indicator. And again, all of that is all available within the help system, by the way. Detailed explanation of each report and how to use those reports. So if I go into a weighted action list, upside expert rating, this gives me expert ratings on stocks higher than 95 or greater, is how I've got it set up. And it then gives me a weighting idea based upon, again, based on a bunch of indicators. So I know that if there's a 97 high rating, this particular one has information about how the group's doing. So how about that? So this stock has the best weight, which means it's the strongest candidate that's had a high rating to the upside. But the thing that sends off warning signals is that the group itself is in a very strong tearing down. So that might, you might be better off going with a stock that's like this, that's in a group that's got a good trend, or one that's in a good trend and has a good delta trend score too, which we don't have a lot of in here. This one's very, 42 trend score is not a trend. So these types of stocks like this one is delta trend score 7, Hasbro. So this one's had a high expert rating confirmed by a phase, and it's got a good weight, so it's at the top of the list. I can literally either chart this one stock, or I could take all these stocks and throw them into a new list if I wanted to do that, which is a create list function. Or I'm going to do what I did last time, or I can just highlight a few stocks. So if I highlight like 3 stocks, one we're really interested in is Hasbro. All 3 stocks get launched in charts. So really, really good. So Hasbro was the high expert rating on the stock. Could have happened in the last 10 days. So how do I find it? Click on the ER, and there it is. It had a 97 up signal right here. So it's not a bad signal. It's not a bad signal. I mean, it's moved up already. It's pretty high. I mean, it looks pretty extended. So you might want to consider, a different stock back in the reports here. As long as the group is, okay, this way we're coming from bottom up rather than going top down. We're looking for a good stock and seeing if the group itself is confirming. So this is Texas Pack. So we know the group was pretty good in this one. It's kind of journeying along that band up there. Plenty of room to the upside. So you might say, hey, yeah, that's a pretty good looking stock. You just look at the volume. Yeah, so the volume has kind of depreciated a bit. I'm one of these people, like, if you get a volume when the price runs away like this, once the volume starts to fade away down here, right? Look how low that volume is. Kind of an exhaustion of the move up. So got to keep an eye on that. But I'll tag it to that list. When I click tag again, click OK. So remember that list. Once I've done, gone through my analysis here, I go back to my list and look at the 3 stocks that are in there, right? The 3 stocks that we tagged. So what I can do then is I could use other indicators to confirm my analysis before I make a trading decision. And that's just, that's just one way of slicing this pie. Group sector, always start with the market log. I love group sector rotation. It's tried and tested, and it really is. You can go to the next level and go, so the group, you can start at the sector. There's obviously, it's a macro, the secondary macro view. Look at the sector analysis. Energy is the runaway sector at the moment, and the financials are right at the bottom. And if you're an advocate of group sector, segments of the market, what stage the market is in, when it's at the top or at the bottom or in transition, you can see that going on in here all the time. So quick check there of a couple of things that we can do in groups and sectors. This, by the way, is the telephone icon. Gives you an idea. We used to use an acoustic coupler to update our old DOS software. If you don't know what an acoustic coupler is, it's the old way you take the old handset, hook to a phone line so that you could then send a signal in order to connect to a data modem at the other end and bring down data. I'm not going to spend time in looking at data. You can add or delete stocks just to give you an idea of what's in here. This shows me what's in my database. Total number of tickers I have in here is 6,857. Pretty much anything I want to look at is going to be in there, right? Mutual funds you can get. I've got some here. London stocks I can get too if I have to pay extra for those things. All the groups and sectors and indexes are all in here too. So it's just that this is just a way of managing. You can also import if you're like a fan of a newsletter or a service out there that gives you stock picks. If they send you a stock pick in a list, then it can be exported or dumped into a CSV file. You can import them in here. There's this great advanced list edit, and what I can do with that tool, I can create a new list. Call it C4, and I can import the CSV file. As long as it's just got tickers in it, right? I can bring it in, and it'll create a list, and it'll be in the system, just like all those lists we saw in charts. And it'll be everywhere in the system. You can use it everywhere. So great tool to have. Right, quick couple of other things up here. The portfolio manager. This is, again, portfolio management is not something I don't have filled out in here at the moment. You can create, this is one thing you can do, create your accounts, dump your accounts in here. If I create a new account, I can import my accounts from another brokerage, right? Pop them in here. But guess what else I can do in here, which we're barely going to touch on today, which is a simulation. So I can take, and we have a tool here called Expert Design Studio, which, by the way, has hundreds of rules already in here, strategies. I can take a strategy that I like. I can back test it in here. See, this is a back test. So it doesn't matter what this is. Market leader strategy. Here's a back test button. Shows me the last time I tested it in here to see if it's any good, right? If I find a strategy I like, back testing is only the beginning. You take that strategy exactly as it is, don't have to do anything. You throw it into a simulator here, and it treats it and it trades it like, hey, okay, you want me to use this strategy that you back tested? Let's trade it with like we're doing real money, right? And it'll allow you to do that. So if I create a new account here, I'll just call it Test 5. Won't bother with any of the tax stuff for the moment. But if I use a strategy, to enter a position, just pick 1, 6. The file is in because I got loads of these in my system here. And it comes with a lot of strategies actually built in. We have a folder called WinTest 3.2, EDS strategies, and all of these subfolders have either strategies or custom indicators. So I'm going to pick all trading strategies. And again, I'm just doing this. This is protecting my initial capital, how I exit on a rule, what's my entry rule. I've got a whole bunch in here. So I'll call it a breakout squeeze just for grins. Here's the big thing when you do a backtesting is all very good, a great strategy. But what happens a lot is that it fires a lot on one day and then doesn't fire for another 10 days. And the day it does fire, it might fire and you get 50 stocks. So in here, you could capitalize rules. What's the number of shares I buy in each position? What's the percentage of my portfolio maximum that I'll use in any position? What's the maximum number of open positions that I'm allowed to have? Because number one, who wants to have 500 open positions, right? It's just not, you just don't want to do that. So there is a whole methodology here to capitalize, I'm not going to do that right now, and actually do a test, simulation, walk forward testing. And I tell you, when you do that, it really, really works because it will not be able to buy the 20 stocks that fired today. Even if in the back test it looks fantastic, you just don't have the capital. Bear that in mind. This is a great tool when you get more into the platform here. Some of the other areas in here, messages are just download messages. You might check in there once in a while to see if there's a problem with a download. The other area here is, this is called Matchmaker. And this is a correlation tool. You want to find one stock that correlates well with another. You can do this. You can set it off and say, hey, let's go ahead and let's find, ticker, we will pick SPY. And over the last, change that, I don't have data for that day. over the last year, and I'll use weekly data against the list of the SP 500 stocks, and tell me all the stocks that have the same sort of price pattern as SPY. SPY, of course, is the spider for the S&P 500. And it does a rank, a spearman rank correlation. Yes, I'll look at system messages because it didn't find anything for me. Of course, that's down on another screen here. Hang on a second. Oh, right. So I've deleted SPY out of there. So this is the last thing we'll be doing today, just to show you that this tool, we could, spend a lot more time doing this. I am available to do one-on-ones, but we do tend to charge for those if you're interested in doing that. I'll do a ticker. Let's see what, like Tesla. Let's see what Tesla correlates with. And that's 2025 to 211.26. And let's click OK. This one should work. So you can see the numbers going by here. So basically, I'll give you an idea of, on weekly data over the last year, what stocks move somewhat closely to what Tesla does. And it needs usually about 800 or 900 is the level you're looking for. So this is only 623. So when I look at, if I look at this particular stock and throw it into a chart, there's Tesla and the stock itself. Yeah, it is. It's not that correlated, but as you can see, the price action here and here is pretty good, pretty correlated here. This one's gone down a lot more than this one. If I go into weekly data, remember the correlation is over this period here in the last year. So you get a sort of similar peaks in the price action, but this is not as highly correlated as we want. If we get stocks that are 800 or 900, what it means is that if you're struggling to find a stock and you find one stock that you really like, see if there's another stock that moves in the same way. It's also worth considering for a trade. So it's a little more of an advanced tool out there. So if you have any questions, pop them in chat. I know it's a really quick session, and a bunch of people are obviously can never make the session. I always have to send out the recording. You get 35 people registered and only half a dozen turn up, which is fine. So it'll be recorded. I'll send it out anyway. If you don't have any questions or you want to ask questions in email, just drop me an email to shill@aiqsystems.com. And I will endeavor to answer them for you. Yeah, recordings save our lives, really, because not everybody can come into these sessions. Yeah, we got a huge number of people looking at recordings. So yeah, if there's no questions, great. Thanks for coming in. I will do, for those of you who are more familiar with AIQ, we'll be doing another session later this month on using the AI and trading strategy. This trading strategy that I showed you very briefly over here, this strategy was created and written in code in our language that is in here using AI, and about an hour's worth of work from me on top. It created that. Okay, talk again another day. Have a great evening.